Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Barbell Medicine YouTube channel, where we bring modern medicine to strength and conditioning and strength and conditioning to modern medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum. Today is a diet vlog. If you guys don't know, I'm moving up a weight class to the 105 kilo class. It's 231 pounds. I normally sit at the 198s or the 205s, depending on what federation I'm competing in, but I decided to take the plunge, move up a weight class. I have some numbers I want to hit, and I feel like I'm kind of outgrowing the 90 kilo or the 93 kilo weight class. And so I'm going to take you guys through a day of eating now that I'm trying to gain weight. So yeah, this is what I eat on a normal basis. Let's get right into it with my favorite meal of the day, breakfast. All right, so as you guys can see, it's gonna be an omelet and oatmeal kind of morning. I am trying to hit a specific amount of macros per day in order to gain weight. So right now my numbers are 200 grams of protein, 500 grams of carbohydrates, and 100 grams of fat per day in total. I generally eat 4 to 5 meals a day, so this is meal number 1, and then we'll probably try to split up the protein throughout all of those meals. And because we're eating so many carbohydrates, it's gonna look like a lot less animal sourced protein, but it's totally fine because the essential amino acid content is still gonna be pretty high per meal, so I'm not worried at all about micromanaging my essential amino acid intake. All right, so let's get to cooking. Okay, started with the bacon. I don't have bacon every day of the week, usually 3 times a week or less, just kind of keep my processed meat intake in check. On days that I don't have bacon, I usually add an extra egg yolk to make up for the fat that's in this glorious goodness. So that's my bacon. I'm gonna cook that first and then add some egg to it. Now, because my carbohydrates are so high, I'm actually gonna end up having a lot less protein from like animal sources than you guys think, just due to those trace proteins in those carbohydrates. So we got 17 grams of protein from egg. We've got 6 grams from the bacon for 1 serving of that. So that puts us at 23 grams of protein. Then we're gonna have 7 grams here from 1 serving of cheese. So now we're at 30 grams of protein. And then I'm gonna do 3 servings of oatmeal this morning, and that's gonna be another 15 grams. So that puts us at 45 grams of protein for the meal, which is gonna be totally sufficient for my total essential amino acid needs per meal. And then my protein goal per meal is right around that 40 to 50 grams of protein, just depending on how many meals I end up having during the day. So good start to the morning. And then I also have some blueberries that I'm gonna end up having 2 servings of to get my total fruit and vegetable servings in the morning. So I know the question is going to be about the egg situation here. So why egg whites over whole eggs? Why did you add only 1 whole egg? Is it about dietary cholesterol? Not really. I don't think dietary cholesterol tends to be a big predictor of blood cholesterol levels, except in folks who are either really good at absorbing dietary cholesterol or people with other sort of congenital issues with cholesterol production or removal. So some folks will have to cut their dietary cholesterol down in order to reduce cholesterol levels. I think one thing we can do to promote health with respect to cholesterol levels is actually keeping our total dietary saturated fat intake down to less than 10% of total daily calories. And so I'll show you guys how I do that. But I wouldn't really worry about dietary cholesterol unless you're in one of those categories who either absorbs it very, very efficiently or has some other congenital disorder like familial hypercholesterolemia or something like that. All right, bacon's cooked, so we're gonna add the egg to that. Kind of let this cook. Hopefully I get a good omelet turnout today. It would be my luck that while I'm filming, it would be not so great. Yeah, and so the other thing I do to make sure that I'm getting the right amount of carbohydrates and calories, etc., is that if I'm making something in my kitchen, I'm just gonna measure it because it's already here, right? I'm not gonna try to eyeball it too much, especially if it's a change from my norm. Now, when I was maintaining weight, so I do 3 servings here, that's 120 grams. When I was maintaining weight, I could like eyeball stuff very, very accurately. But since I've made this dietary change, I know that I'm gonna have to take more specific changes here. So I got 3 servings here of oatmeal, add a little bit of water, cook that. Same thing with the cheese. Just turn the scale on. Just do 1 serving of cheese here. Easy way for portion control. A lot of times when people are like, oh, I'm eating this much, I'm not gaining weight, or I'm eating this much, I'm not losing weight. You know, first thing we want to make sure is that adherence is good and that they're actually taking in the numbers that they say they are. Because, you know, and then overcoming those obstacles that are preventing them from hitting the correct numbers. So first things first is just making sure that the numbers are accurate. All right, this looks good. Fold number one. It's a little diner style omelet. I'm kind of bummed because all week I've been having really good looking omelets. And now, of course, with the camera rolling, this is very average looking, but we'll plate it. So from all of my other carb and protein sources, I'm at about 25 grams of fat. I'll get you the final numbers up when we look at the whole meal. So I'm not gonna add any more fat to the oatmeal, but I will add some blueberries. So wash these blueberries yesterday. I'm gonna add about 150 grams, 160 grams rather, which would be about 2 servings. You can use a cup, a measuring cup for these, but since I have the scale out, I just use that. That looks pretty good. All right, add a little stevia, a little cinnamon, mix it up, and we'll have breakfast. All right, so this is breakfast. Got the trifold omelet, a little bacon in it, got the massive serving of oatmeal this morning. It's not my best work aesthetically, but I'm not a gourmet chef. This is what I'm gonna be eating. I'm not gonna make you guys watch me eat, but here are the macros for this meal, and we'll catch you at the next one. All right, what's up? We're back with meal number 2. This is usually something that's grab and go for me, usually in between getting work done, and then it's also my pre-workout meal. Now, general rules for me when I talk to people about pre and post-workout nutrition, I typically say, hey, we should have more carbohydrates in those meals and less fat. The idea is that if you are calorie restricted at all, satiety or feelings of fullness are really, really important in order to improve adherence. And so what I'd like to do is, if we're gonna have a lot of carbohydrates or more carbohydrates, in particular meals, I think if we put the fat in the other meals, that might improve satiety, might improve adherence. Additionally, increasing the fat content or the fiber content of a meal tends to make it take longer to get from the mouth, through the digestive system and into the bloodstream. So those are more considerations when we don't either have a lot of time between the meal and when you're training, or if somebody's in a calorie restricted state. If you are on in a calorie surplus, I don't know that you need to take those steps. And additionally, if you have enough time between the meal you're consuming and when you're gonna train or exercise, I don't think that you need to take those steps. So this is gonna be a pretty balanced meal for me. Again, I pretty much eat 4 or 5, pretty similar meals, similar from a macronutrient and total calorie perspective. Maybe a little bit more carbohydrates in this meal and my post-workout meal, but nothing crazy. And I am gonna have some fat with this meal. So I know people were gonna go, what the heck, man? Why are you having fat in your pre and post-workout meal? It just doesn't matter. I don't know that we need to micromanage things that much. The broader dietary pattern is probably more important. And then, adherence. So we're gonna do something pretty quick. I'm not gonna have to cook hardly anything, and I'll take you guys through it. Greek yogurt, 2 servings of fruit in this one. So we got an apple, let's do a banana. So again, I'm trying to get somewhere like 10 total servings of fruit and vegetables. So this will be 3 and 4, maybe close to 5, because this is a fairly large apple. I'm gonna add some honey to the yogurt because I want that. Do some more oatmeal because I like oats, and I'll put some peanut butter in there. And that'll be pretty good. So the only thing that I actually need to make is gonna be the oatmeal. And again, just one strategy that I have for making sure that I'm getting, the right amount of carbohydrates in this case, I'm just gonna weigh it. I'm in my kitchen, doesn't really add too much time. 3 servings, 120, there you go, 120 grams. So most of the oats that I make end up being from the microwave. Tom vehemently disagrees with me on that these are actual quality oats. He prefers the slow cooked on the oven oats. I don't know. I don't have a preference. I don't want to make that big of a mess. So microwave oats for me. Now, the reason I put it back on the scale is because I'm actually going to measure out my peanut butter that I'm going to put in here. So I'm going to do 1 serving. And I think nut butters and other sort of untracked calorie dense foods or harder to track calorie dense foods tend to be problematic for those who are in a calorie restricted state or trying to lose weight. So they'll just eyeball like, oh, that was 2 tablespoons, and then they'll end up licking the lid or have an extra half a serving or something. It's just too many calories for them to deal with, and it actually puts them over their calorie goal. So I just put it on the scale, I'm gonna measure it out. This is 32 grams for a serving. I would do the same thing if I was like putting it on bread or toast or anything like that. I would literally just measure it out. And if that's not something that you wanna do, these foods are harder to track than something like almonds where you could literally count out or just weigh the actual mass of the, or take the mass of the almonds, based on the serving size. So 32 grams, we'll just use this little spoon. Cool thing is it turns to like this like molten peanut butter, which I really do like. So this is tared out, so that's 24 grams. We'll add a little bit more, 31, almost there. Perfect. Okay, so I'll add a little bit of cinnamon to this, and that'll be the meal. All right, so this is definitely not high class dining, but this is what I'm eating during a normal workday. So, yep, got the serving of yogurt, a little bit of honey in there, 2.5 servings of fruit, 3 servings of oatmeal plus some peanut butter, and then wait about 2 hours after this before I go train. And that's totally personal preference. Some people like training on a full stomach. Some people like training on a empty stomach. But for me, about 2 hours is that nice sweet spot. All right, just got back home, took a shower, changed. It is time for meal number 3, post-workout meal. What I like to do is actually make my last 2 meals together and then I split them. So we're gonna do the bro dinner. This is, again, not gourmet cooking, but this is just what I eat on a regular basis. We're gonna make some chicken using the sous vide. We're going to make a rice in the rice maker, and then also some vegetables to make sure that I get my greens in as well. So let's go ahead and make dinner. All right, so the sous vide is coming up to temperature. So basically what this is a water immersion cooker. Mine is from Anova. I've had this thing for like 2 years. I use it all the time for food prep because it is amazing. So effectively, this keeps this water bath at the exact temperature I set it to. For chicken, I usually like 155 degrees. In order to cook chicken, the proper temperature for it to be done is like 165 internal temperature. So what I do is I cook it in here first, up to 155 degrees for an hour. And basically it's ready to go at that point to finish. And so how I finish it is gonna be either on a cast iron pan, which we'll do tonight, or on a grill or something. Because basically food coming out of the sous vide, if you're gonna eat it right out of the sous vide, it's you want to do like a shredded chicken or something like that because it's missing those really tasty bits on the outside of the meat, which is due to what's called the Maillard reaction. Maillard was a, French chemist. In any event, the cross-linking of the proteins on the surface of the meat effectively make for these really tasty, what are called ketosamines. And so in any event, you can cook it first here in the sous vide, which I think for the price, these things are really, really amazing. You can really make a lot of cool stuff. Not only just meat, you can make really good sweet potatoes, you can make yogurt, you can make the best poached eggs ever with this thing really, really simply, and there's a bunch of cool recipes. But so yeah, we'll cook this for an hour, the chicken for an hour in here. Once this comes up to temperature, 155 degrees, we'll finish it on the cast iron skillet in order to get that Maillard reaction, that nice browning on the actual chicken, so it's tasty. And then while that's cooking, we'll also make some rice. So I'll get the rice going while this is coming up to temperature, and then get the chicken ready to cook in here. So for the rice, I just use a rice cooker. That's probably the cheapest rice cooker I found on Amazon. Again, I've had it for, 2 years or something like that, and it still works great. So what I'm gonna do is actually make enough rice for this meal and the next meal. It's typically how I do my last 2 meals of the day. I just eat the same thing twice or similar thing twice. It's a really easy way to go about your food prep if you're kind of doing this on the go. Just make a little bit more or double what you're normally going to consume, and so that way you'll have leftovers for either the next meal or the next day. Really easy way if you don't want to do a whole bunch of meal prep at once. So we're going to do, I believe it's 5.5 servings here, which we'll split that up. I'll probably have 2/3 here. This is a post-workout meal, so I'll have a little bit more carbs, and then 1/3 of it after it's cooked for the last meal of the day, the 4th meal of the day. So So while this is heating up, I'm actually gonna get the chicken prepared in that vacuum sealed bag. I don't typically weigh the chicken per portion before I cook it. I do it afterwards. I know that most of the ways that I cook it, so either sous vide, in the oven, using a cast iron pan or grilling it or whatever, the chicken's gonna lose about the same amount of weight when I cook it. So I'm looking for about 30 grams of chicken, 30 grams of protein from the chicken, which is going to be just under 4 ounces of cooked chicken in this manner. So you can use the USDA food database and kind of look up the way you're cooking it and see what the cooked portion is. Otherwise, you can weigh it raw and figure out the protein from that. So usually a palm-sized portion, a palm-sized portion of chicken, cooked chicken, is about 4 ounces, which is like 35 grams. And I'm looking for just under that, so just under 4 ounces, about 3.7 ounces of cooked chicken or so. So in any event, I'll get the chicken ready for this guy here. All right, so the rice is done cooking. It is cooling off right now. The chicken I pulled out of the sous vide. It is resting over there. It doesn't quite look like it's perfectly done because the outside again is not brown. There's no Maillard reaction, none of those tasty ketosamines there waiting for me. So I'm gonna finish it on the cast iron grill. Now I gotta add a little butter to it, and this actually brings up a good point. What do you do about added cooking fats if you're using them when you're counting your macros? Do you need to weigh it out, or how do you kind of calculate these in? So I think here's a good point to make, that I'm not necessarily concerned with people being accurate, making sure they get every gram, every calorie accounted for, as long as they're doing it the same way each time, as long as they're precise. So I want you to do it the same way every single time, and that'll allow you to make adjustments based on what you're actually doing. So for me, I actually tend to count the cooking fats that I do cook with, even if some of it ends up is still in the pan or some of it I don't actually consume. That's just the way I do it. But if I didn't count it, then when I made my adjustments to my macros later on, as long as I did it the same way each time, that would be okay. All right, so the chicken's almost done here. Easiest way to actually check if the internal temperature is up to the desired amount, so 165 for chicken, is to use a thermopen. So I'm gonna check the internal temp, just stick it in, 165, 165, good, 65, good. All right, so we're all good. So we'll pull this off, cut it up, and then plate it for you guys. All right, so here is dinner number one, post-workout meals, 4 ounces cooked chicken, 4 servings of white rice, 2 servings of broccoli, a little bit of teriyaki there in the background. And yeah, I feel the same way about sauces as I do about cooking fats. If you need to accurately measure everything because you're trying to limit something like saturated fat, like any other sort of dietary component in particular, then sure, measure them. But otherwise, I'm more concerned with precision and consistency than I am with absolute accuracy. So if you're gonna count them, just always count them. If you're not gonna count them, don't count them, and just make sure you're using the same amount on a regular basis. All right, so this is the 4th meal. I'm gonna eat this, read a little bit, and yeah, so let's do it. So this is the last meal of the day. It's just pretty much like the 3rd meal, except for we've got edamame and a little bit less rice because this is not a post-workout meal. So carbohydrates are a little bit less on this one than they were on the last meal. Just make sure you guys can see that. And we got a little more fat there. So we got 2 servings of almonds, we got 2 servings of edamame, got 1.5 servings of rice, and then about 4 ounces cooked of chicken. Yeah, and then that is all I'm gonna eat for today. So I just want to go over some of the kind of finer points of the diet, because everyone's going to ask, hey, how do I figure out how to do this myself? Like, okay, where's all this information? So I think the easiest way to start is figuring out your total daily calorie intake. What do you need? So you can use any one of the calculators online. They'll all give you a little bit different numbers. The ones that I prefer are the NIH, the National Institutes of Health Body Planner. I'll link that in the description below, or the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation. The NIH Body Planner is really cool. You can plug in a bunch of extra data. It's free, and it's based on some really sound science. So that science and then some additional data has what's helped build our nutrition template. That'll be out pretty soon, but yeah, it's a really cool little body planner if you put it on expert mode and show some of the advanced controls. So that's fun, but that just gives you a calorie number, right? So from there, you want to figure out, if you're actually going to take the steps to kind of track like this, what should your macros be? So first thing you figure out is your protein intake, and our general recommendation is 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram body weight per day. On the low end, 1.6, and then the high end is 3.1. So if you're maintaining weight or gaining weight, you can be towards the lower end. Towards the upper end, you'd be actively losing weight and very, very lean already, and training hard. So like that person, getting ready for a bodybuilding show, or somebody who's anabolically resistant. So if they're older, if they have a medical condition or something else that makes them more anabolically resistant. Most people get away between that 1.6 to 2, 1.6 to 2.5 gram per kilo per day. That would be fine, and you can do animal sources. They could be plant-based sources. As long as you're getting that much protein in per day, I would not micromanage that. So that's your protein intake, and then the rest of your sort of energy intake, so carbs and fat, should be basically up to personal preference, with the caveat that we think you should limit your saturated fat intake to 10% of your total daily calories or less. And if you want more information on that, you should read the Science of Red Meat Intake article that I wrote. That's in the description below as well. How many carbs should you have? It's really, again, personal preference. I think a good place to start would be somewhere in that 3 gram of carbs per kilo per day. If you have that many carbs available to you, you can go a little bit less than that. If you don't, if you're on a calorie restricted diet, or if you prefer to have more fats in the diet, again, keeping that saturated fat intake kind of rule, if you will, in mind. And then of those carbohydrates, we think you should be trying to aim for 10 servings of fruit and vegetables per day. It could be 5 and 5, could be 4 and 6, whatever way you want to slice it. I think today got pretty close. That's a pretty normal day. So 8 to 10 servings a day is what I get. So would encourage you to do the same. And then from there, you need to adjust your nutrition intake based on results. So if you're trying to lose weight, are you losing weight? Or if you're not, you need to reduce energy intake, usually from carbs and fat. If you're trying to gain weight, and then your weekly average weight, for example, is not going up, you need to add fuel. And again, it should probably be carbs and fat. And if you're not into tracking like this, that's fine. There are other strategies that you can employ to get results. They could be meal plans, time-restricted feeding windows, so not just one way to skin a cat. In any event, this is the way that I like, and I think anytime that somebody's making a really significant change from their baseline diet and they're trying to actively gain weight or lose weight, that you probably need to take a few extra steps as far as measuring quantity. But yeah, this is my diet. Let's actually check. Let's look at my MyFitnessPal. So I use this app. They're not paying me to say this. I didn't even buy like the subscription. So I'm just using the free one that I've been using for like almost a decade now. Let's check out my macros. So I got 203 grams protein, 501 grams of carbohydrates, and 100 grams of fat. So anything within plus or minus 5 grams, that's where I'm aiming for. That's like good adherence. Let's see, fiber intake, 58 grams. I recommend folks get between 35 grams of fiber on a minimum. So 58 grams, I did that. Saturated fat intake was well under that 10% mark. I don't get any extra points for being well under 10%, but 10% is kind of like my upper mark. The cholesterol, yeah, I wouldn't really worry about that. And sodium, it's fine. It's just the stuff that's in food. I do add a little bit of salt to my food, but well under the recommendation of being less than 2,400 milligrams per day. And yeah, so that is my diet for a day. You guys have been asking. I delivered, finally. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you get hints on all the latest drops. Leave us a comment below. Love to hear from you. And hey, share this video with one of your friends. Really helps grow the channel.